April 13th, 1953, Washington, D.C. A single memo signed by the Director of Central Intelligence authorized what would become the most ambitious and most disturbing secret program in American history. It wasn't a weapons program. It wasn't a surveillance network. It was a program to control the human mind, not the minds of enemies, not the minds of foreign agents, the minds of American citizens, Canadian citizens, patients in hospitals, soldiers on bases, prisoners in cells, addicts in safe houses set up by the CIA itself. The program had a name, MK Ultra. And for over 2 decades, the United States government looked you in the eye and told you it didn't exist. What they admitted to in 1977 was disturbing enough. What they destroyed before anyone could find out, that's a story they never told you. To understand MK Ultra, you have to understand the terror. It's 1950. The Korean War has just begun. American soldiers are being captured by Chinese and North Korean forces, and when some of them come back, they are different. They speak in rehearsed sentences. They denounce their own country on camera. They sign confessions for things they never did. American intelligence called it brainwashing. Journalist Edward Hunter coined the term in 1950, and it sent shockwaves through Washington. CIA Director Allen Dulles stood before a group of Princeton alumni in 1953 and called it a sinister battle for men's minds. He believed the Soviets had found a way to reprogram human beings, and he believed America was losing. His answer was simple. If they're doing it to us, we do it to them first. Better, deeper, without limits. He found his weapon in a man named Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb was a chemist, a folk dancer, a man who raised goats in rural Virginia and composted his kitchen scraps. He had a stutter and a clubfoot. He seemed by every measure unremarkable. But inside the CIA, they called him the Black Sorcerer. Gottlieb's theory was precise. You can't simply add information to a person's mind. You have to erase what's already there first. Blast away the existing personality. Create a blank slate, then rebuild. On April 13th, 1953, the same day Allen Dulles signed the authorization, Project MK Ultra officially began. 20% of the entire Technical Services Division budget, 144 subprojects, 80 institutions, 44 universities, 12 hospitals, 3 prisons, and not one of the subjects was told they were part of an experiment. The first weapon Gottlieb chose was LSD. In 1953, the CIA purchased the entire world supply of LSD from the Swiss manufacturer Sandoz, approximately 10 kilograms, enough for 100 million doses. They believed it could be the key to unlocking the human mind, a truth serum, a weapon, a tool to make enemy agents confess or to incapacitate an entire population's ability to think clearly. To test this theory, they turned to their own people. In a Kentucky hospital, volunteers, inmates from the Lexington Federal Narcotics Farm, were given LSD every single day for 77 consecutive days. Researchers watched, took notes. They were looking for the breaking point. Other experiments were conducted on mental patients who were never told they were receiving experimental drugs, on soldiers who were told they were testing medications, on CIA officers themselves, including Gottlieb, who dosed his own colleagues at a retreat in rural Maryland without warning. One of those colleagues was Frank Olson. We'll come back to him. In San Francisco and New York, the CIA set up what they called safe houses. They were apartments, rented under false names, decorated to look like ordinary rooms, Behind the mirrors, one-way glass. Behind the walls, recording equipment. The CIA called the operation Midnight Climax. The concept was this: lure unsuspecting men, drug users, men solicited from the streets, into these apartments, drug them with LSD without their knowledge, and watch what happened. George Hunter White, the CIA operative who ran the San Francisco operation, later wrote about it in his personal diary. He described the work with a kind of cheerful brutality. In his own words, George Hunter White, from his personal diary, quote, "Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest," end quote. Each location cost the CIA $10,000 per year. For over a decade, no one outside a handful of officers knew it existed. Perhaps the most disturbing chapter of MK Ultra happened not in the United States, but in Canada. Dr. Ewen Cameron was one of the most respected psychiatrists in the world, president of the American Psychiatric Association, president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association, president of the World Psychiatric Association. He was also secretly receiving funding from the CIA. Between 1957 and 1964, the CIA paid Cameron $69,000 to conduct experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Cameron called his method psychic driving, and what he did to his patients was, by any standard, torture. Patients came to the Allen Memorial seeking help for anxiety, for depression, for ordinary mental health struggles. Instead, they were placed in what Cameron called the sleep room. In the sleep room, patients were kept unconscious for weeks at a time. Some slept for 86 days. While they slept, speakers under their pillows played recorded messages. The same message, hundreds of thousands of times. Cameron called this depatterning. He believed he could erase a personality and write a new one. To accelerate the process, he administered electroconvulsive shock therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal intensity used in psychiatric practice. The results were not a blank slate. They were catastrophe. Linda McDonald was 25 years old when she was admitted to the Allen Memorial Institute. She was a mother of 5 children. She arrived with mild depression. After Cameron's treatment, she could not recognize her own children. She could not remember her wedding. She could not perform basic tasks, cooking, dressing herself. She had to be toilet trained like an infant. She had spent 102 days in a coma. Esther Schreier arrived 8 months pregnant. She received 29 electroshock sessions while carrying her child. Lou Weinstein was 49 years old, a successful businessman, a man with a life. Cameron destroyed it. His son Harvey later became a psychiatrist. Specifically, he said, because he spent his entire life trying to understand what had been done to his father. November 18th, 1953. Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. A small CIA retreat. A cabin in the woods. A group of men gathered for an off-site meeting. After dinner, Sidney Gottlieb secretly added LSD to a bottle of Cointreau. Frank Olson, an Army biochemist who worked with the CIA on biological weapons programs, drank from that bottle. He was not told what was in it. Over the following days, Olson fell apart. He became paranoid, withdrawn. He told colleagues he believed he was being followed. His family noticed something had changed in him in a way they could not name. 9 days later, on November 28th, 1953, Frank Olson fell from a window on the 13th floor of the Hotel Statler in New York City. Room 1018A. He was 43 years old. The CIA told his family it was a suicide. They were given a cover story. His wife and 3 children were not told the truth for 20 years. In 1994, Frank Olson's family requested a second autopsy. The forensic pathologist found something the original examination had missed: a blunt force trauma to the skull above the left eye, an injury consistent with being struck before going through the window. The cause of death was officially reclassified from suicide to unknown. The CIA's own assassination training manual, obtained years later, describes the fall from a height of 75 feet or more as a reliable method for staging an accidental death. Room 1018A of the Hotel Statler was on the 13th floor. This is what they left behind: not statistics, not classified documents, people. In his own words, Bob Logie, a patient of the Allen Memorial Institute, quote, "I went in there as a young man. I came out not knowing who I was. I didn't know my name. I didn't know my family. I had to learn everything again like a child, except I was a grown man with a life they had erased." End quote. Hilda Bernstein, another survivor, quote, "There are years of my life that are simply gone, not vague, not blurry, gone, as if they never happened, because for me, in a very real sense, they didn't." End quote. Velma Orlikow, wife of a Canadian member of Parliament, was one of the first survivors to bring a lawsuit against the CIA. Quote, "I trusted this man completely. I believed he was healing me. What he was actually doing, I still cannot fully comprehend. What kind of mind does that to another human being and calls it medicine?" End quote. One survivor whose identity we are protecting at her request, quote, "I was a vegetable. That's the only word for it. I was a vegetable. I had a husband, I had children, I had a whole life, and I came out not knowing any of it. The CIA did that to me, and they were never held responsible, not once." End quote. Diane McIntosh was 5 years old when her mother, Helene, was admitted to the Allen Memorial Institute. She remembers visiting, quote, "She just sat there, in that chair. She didn't recognize me. I was 5 years old and my mother looked right through me. I kept saying, 'Mommy.' She didn't answer. That's what they took from her, from us, and no one went to prison for it." End quote. Helene McIntosh herself, speaking years later, quote, "I didn't go in there crazy. I want to be clear about that. I went in there with a problem that could have been solved. What they gave me instead was nothing. They took everything I was and left me with nothing." End quote. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms, the same man who had signed the original authorization memo 20 years earlier, ordered the destruction of all MK Ultra files. Most were burned. Most were gone. 20,000 documents survived, only because they had been misfiled in a budget records warehouse in Maryland. A records manager found them by accident. They are the reason we know anything at all. In 1977, CIA Director Admiral Stansfield Turner stood before the United States Senate and confirmed that the program had existed. 144 subprojects, 80-plus institutions, 20,000 documents. Of the thousands of people experimented on, only 14 were ever formally notified that they had been used as test subjects. 14. Sidney Gottlieb received immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony. He was never charged with a crime. He spent his final years on a farm in rural Virginia, raising goats, composting his kitchen scraps. He died in 1999 at the age of 80. In one of his final interviews, he admitted that MK Ultra had failed. that no one had ever discovered a reliable method for controlling the human mind, that the entire program had been built on a false premise. The program continued for over 2 decades anyway. In 2017, a woman known publicly only as Allison Steele reached a confidential settlement with the Canadian government over her family's experience at the Allen Memorial Institute. The terms of the settlement are sealed. She signed a non-disclosure agreement. The Canadian government is still paying victims, still sealing settlements, still protecting the names of institutions and individuals involved. In 2017, not 1957, not 1977, 2017. The techniques developed under MK Ultra did not disappear with the program. Researchers who have studied the declassified documents have identified specific methods: sensory deprivation, sleep disruption, induced psychological regression, that appear decades later in the enhanced interrogation protocols used at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay. Michael Evans, editorial director of the National Security Archive, put it plainly. The concern is not just what happened then. The concern is what the existence of those methods, tested, documented, preserved, means for what might be possible today. There are files that remain classified to this day. Not everything was in that warehouse in Maryland. John Marks, the journalist whose Freedom of Information Act request uncovered the surviving documents, once said this about his investigation. Quote, "The most frightening thing wasn't what we found, it was what we'll never know." End quote. April 13th, 1953. A signature on a page, 144 subprojects, thousands of human beings, an unknown number of destroyed lives, one program that admitted it failed and ran for 22 years, and a file cabinet that should have been burned, sitting in a warehouse in Maryland waiting to be found. The Church Committee closed its investigation in 1977. The Senate declared the program an aberration, a product of its time, something that could never happen again. But consider this. The authorization memo that started MK Ultra was signed on April 13th, 1953. It took 20 years for anyone outside the CIA to know it existed. It took another 4 years after that for the Senate to hear about it publicly. And the only reason we know anything at all is because one file cabinet ended up in the wrong building. How many file cabinets are in the right building? We don't know what we don't know. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's what the documents themselves taught us. The last thing Sidney Gottlieb did before he died was ask that his personal journals be destroyed. They were. This is the Last Witness files. Every story has a last witness. Today, you are one of them.